Derk Cheetwood, I'm so glad to have you on. You are one of the more interesting people that I've ever crossed paths with. I'm always fascinated by people who have had success in one career and then they pivot completely to something else that they want to do and have success in that too. I think there's always so much to learn from people who have done that, because that's not easy, right? And so I want to hear about what you're doing now with construction, and I want to hear about your Hollywood career. That was a big part of your life. Take me back to Ohio, where you grew up, before you decide to burn the boats and go to LA for an acting career.
Glad to be here, of course. I got lots of love for you, Matt. Thank you. You helped me a ton. But let's go back. So it was my 11th grade year, and all the kids are talking about where they're going to go to school and college and all these things. And I wasn't the greatest student. I had a lot of fun. I did very well in the things that I was interested in, but there was a lot of peripheral stuff. The drama club back then, the biggest program in my school was Future Farmers of America.
So you were in rural Ohio.
Well, I wasn't, Bowling Green State University, but they're just, it was like football, hockey, which I played hockey, and baseball.
Uh-huh.
And then there was the theater club, which I was telling my wife, who's currently theater director at Brentwood Academy, where we live in Tennessee now, that the club back then was, kids in like goth, you know what I mean? Like they weren't the drama club of today that you get in schools that have fine arts or whatever. I believe it was, I know it was the movie Stand By Me. I went to a mall that's since been closed down and torn down, and went in there one day and watched Stand By Me by myself. My mom was shopping or whatever, and I was like, I did not know what I wanted to do. I had no idea. And I saw that movie and I said, that's what I want to do. I want to tell stories. I want to be part of that process that makes people feel something, right? Because we all go to a movie for an escape or an adventure. We can all talk about the greats, Forrest Gump, and of course Stand By Me is a classic, but
great movie.
I still make my kids watch it every time it's on. I'm like, it's only halfway over. We have another half of this right now.
That scene on the bridge.
Just a moment that I felt like, I know what I want to do, and I'm a kid in Ohio.
Yeah.
I don't have anyone that's forged the path and so my mom, being a school teacher who's been very supportive of me, my dad owned a drywall company, I think I told you. And she said, let's figure it out. Yeah. So she kind of did some research, and we were kind of figuring out where I would live when I got there. And there was a girl that I went to high school with that was a model, and she went out there. So we just ended up rooming for like probably 4 months until we each got our own place. But my mom went out there, kind of did the road work, figured out where I was going to live and all this stuff before I ever even been there. So that was in my senior year, probably about 4 months before I was done.
So you hear these stories, and I envision like not your family not being supportive of this crazy idea. They want you to go to college, and you run away in the middle of the night to go to LA. That's not how this played out. My parents were excited that I had direction finally. You set low expectations.
Yes, that's what you should do. No, I honestly give them credit, because letting a kid go to LA at 18 years old, I would not let my kids go to, my mom was very cool and still is very cool. She's still doing great and everything. But yeah, I talked to her. I was like, hey, I want to do this and I want to give it a shot. And I think in the back of my mind, I was like, well, if it doesn't work, I can always come back. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The baby boomer generation gets a lot of criticism for the way they parented because they're working all the time. But we got to give them credit. They did not protect us.
No, man, we rolled different in the 80s. You know what I mean? There's that meme of that kid jumping that green machine in the air to spread these eye leveled all spreads, no helmet or anything. That's how we rolled in the 80s, yeah. So Graduated high school, worked at a bungee jump. I was a bungee jump instructor for 3 months up in Port Clinton, which is by Sandusky, Ohio. And we had this Tony Jackson, at the time, one of the top 5 jump masters in the world. So he came out and trained us all, and I was a guy that would actually go take you up in the cage. I was all strapped in with my harness, my carabiner, and we had, it was like a little, boats with gas boats that bump into each other, and go-karts and an arcade, and it was right by Lake Erie. So I was a bungee jump instructor for 3 months this summer, and then I left, bought a Chevy S10 pickup truck, loaded my stereo in the back of it, had a tarp over it. I mean, it was the biggest hillbilly setup you've ever seen. One of my buddies road tripped with me out there. He stayed for like a week or 10 days or something, and then he came back and took my first road trip across the country to California. I'd never been on anything other than 2-lane highways before. So I come into LA and there's like 5, and I mean, it was scary. I mean, you could imagine small town Ohio, I'm going to one of the biggest, states in the country, the biggest state in the country.
No GPS.
No GPS. Triptychs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, AAA triptych.
Yeah, you go before you take a vacation. You go to AAA. They print out this little spiral.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a book. You remember?
Yeah.
I mean, the date.
As you change the road, you flip.
It was crazy.
You flip to the next page. I tell my kids this, and they think I'm a dinosaur.
It's crazy, but that was like pretty state of the art, because it was like, this is your clear path to that place,
Yeah. So your mom sends you off with a triptych. Yeah. And an S10 full of speakers.
And some traveler's checks.
Traveler's checks.
I had it all going on, man. I was prepared. And I actually had one of the first bag phones.
Yeah.
And the deal, those were big time. And it was like the first minute was free of an incoming call.
Yep.
So right around 50 seconds, if you were lagging, it was just, you were just gone. It was just like.
Holly and I got our first mobile phone at the county fair in North Carolina, and this was probably 98. And we had one, we shared it with, and they round to the minute. You pay by the minute. So I remember like at 53 seconds of whatever.
Yeah.
You got the conversation.
I was like, get it out. You got seconds left, man.
It was like 12 cents a minute.
Yeah, I think it was like $1 or something. It was expensive. It was like, $60 for like 20 minutes a month or something. And you think about that. We're on the phone. We're on hold for 20 minutes now on the phone.
Right. Yeah.
So got to LA and stayed at this place called the Oakwood Apartments, which is right by Warner Brothers. It's a big studio place where they put people up that are doing movies from out of town. A lot of industry people. It's like corporate housing.
Okay.
So I lived there, and we had a friend that was a script supervisor on Melrose Place. So I got my SAG card by being an extra 3 times on that show, and that's kind of how it was called, your SAG vouchers, which is really hard to get. Like in life, there's always a catch-22. You can't get a job without your SAG card, but you can't get your SAG card without getting your vouchers. And getting into any union's not easy.
The entry point is to get that card.
Right. Like everyone's trying to get their SAG card. Like it's hard. It's hard to get your SAG card, unless you know somebody. Right. And so I saved her. Long story short, she had a little dog that ran across the street. I went and got it. It was 18. She's like, oh my God, you saved my dog. He would have got hit by a car. I'm like, oh, okay, here you go. She's like, I'm a script supervisor at Melrose Place. Do you need your SAG card? And I was like, why, yes, I do. And so that was a, moment, divine intervention, whatever you want to call it.
I think some people would unfairly call that a lucky moment. But you put yourself in that position to have a lucky moment.
Yeah. I feel like I would have done that for, any obviously it was just, it was a moment in time.
But to leave home at 18,
to
put yourself next, like you were intentional, put yourself in the right place where you can make those connections.
Yeah, so I got there, and then, I'm fast forwarding a little bit, but literally 3 months after I got there, I got my SAG card, which is kind of a big deal. And back then, of course, I think there's still Kinko's everywhere, right? Yeah. And so you buy an LA agent book, and it would kind of give you a rundown of agencies in Hollywood, and they were bi-coastal and kind of what they're looking for. And so what you would do is you get a headshot and you would type a cover letter. Now, one thing I can tell you, when I got there, I had a mission. Like, I'm very, and so are you. And I think people who are successful in life, like I saw my lane, I got in it, I hit it hard. I wasn't screwing around. I wasn't, I cleaned carpets. I worked for A1 Carpet. I was like a apprentice or whatever. And we'd clean like the bad guy in Die Hard 1, the guy with the English accent. Like, we got to clean his house. I was like, whoa, you know what I mean? So it was cool. I was going in these like really crazy Hollywood houses, and this guy, and I worked with him for probably 3 or 4 months, and I was trying to make income while I was there. But I went to the Kinko's, and I got this agent. I was on it right away. And the good thing about going to LA when you're young is, like, you got a shot just because you're young. Now, there's still 1,000 things that can happen, but they don't want you showing up in LA when you're 45, like, hey, here I am. Like, you got some, if you have talent, they can grow it. And so the one thing that was on my side was youth, just being young. And I submitted a bunch of, mailed out, they're called mailings, and then agents get them and open them. And if they're interested in meeting you or whatever, they call you. And I lied about everything on the big joke in Hollywood is like, can you ride horses? You're like, you bet. Could you parachute? I've done that a few times. You know what I mean? So the skill set of it was stretched a little bit. You know what I mean?
A common theme of all these success stories that I have on here is everybody fakes it until they make it to a certain
100%.
You have to.
So I ended up finding an agent. This guy named John Hugh. He was in the first movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze. He played the doctor in that. And he had taken over the agency that had brought him up. And it was a small little agency. And so I was there for, 4 years. But fast forward to, I was in acting class out there. Was with a guy named Howard Fine, who was like the guy to be in. So I did go there and start training like right away. And I was in class, and I don't think, I won't pat myself on the back, but you either get the process pretty quickly and are able to, of course, refine it over the years, or they kind of look for the it factor. And I'm not saying I didn't show up with a 6-pack and the most handsome guy to leave Bowling Green, Ohio. You know what I mean? So technically there's probably a lot more work for a guy like me out there, because in my career, I did everything. I played good guys, bad guys, cops, best friends of people. I was the guy in I did 60 national commercials, so I was always the kind of relatable guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my lane was good because I was what they would call a character actor. I wasn't leading man. I was kind of they call it offbeat. And so that was kind of where I found my niche. And I got my first job 6 months after I moved there, which is pretty unheard of. It was this Saturday morning TV show called Running the Halls. It was like a C level of Saved by the Bell, which I did later. But I remember, I got, back in the day, the agencies would get faxes every day, and it would be they're called the breakdowns, and it was the breakdown of everything being cast. And then every day your agent would get it, and then they would submit appropriate clients. And if your agent had relationships with casting directors, they'd say, hey, this new kid, you got to see him, all this stuff. So I went in for this audition, and I played like a jock, the bully jock, and ended up getting it, which was crazy. I can still remember I made $900 for, I think it was like a week, which was a ton of money to me at the time, right? I already had it all spent in my head. I'm like, rollerblades, this is the way I was thinking then. It's like,
you're 18 at this point.
I'm 18, yeah. And agent, taxes, manager, I think I got like 400. So it was just rollerblades on that job, you know what I mean? But while I was auditioning, I ended up getting a job as a host at a place called Bombay Bicycle Club in Burbank. And it was a cool spot. I worked there for, I think, 4 or 5 years. I started as a host, and then I started waiting tables pretty quickly. And everyone wants to wait tables out there because you can make good money. It's pretty flexible. Ended up meeting a great group of friends from all over the country that were also there, aspiring actors. And so it was a really cool community that we that we had there. But yeah, then I would bounce off and do, go and audition, and that was happening more and more. And by the way, like I said, it was in the fast lane, so I was just really trying to get on auditions and get good at that process. And it's nerve-wracking. You walk into a room, there's a bunch of people there staring at you, and you got to memorize these lines, and you got to, they want performance level. Like, you can't go in there and read, So it took me some auditions, of course, to kind of find myself and be comfortable in the room. And people can read body language. They don't want you coming in and shaking their hands. They see 50 people a day or whatever the number is. You come in, they need to understand very quickly that you're probably an easy person to work with, and you know your stuff, and you're professional. So the sales aspect of that, I sold myself for, I was a working actor for 27 years. So that part I kind of got pretty quickly, and I could read rooms, pretty quickly. And I would always be the guy who was like, hey, nice to meet you guys. So I'm going to do it my way. If there's any other way you'd like to see it, let me know. And so that was a important lesson, I think, to kind of pick up on early on. And yeah, so
selling yourself. Yeah. It's not just the craft. Without a lot of people have the skills and can't sell themselves.
I learned later when I did U571 that Jonathan Mostow, who was the director of that, said I would rather hire someone I could spend 6 months with than the best actor in the room. You know what I mean? So yes, you got to deliver what they want, but they also are looking at, can I spend 6 months or 8 months with this guy in another country, work with him every day, and what's he going to be like? They're putting a big puzzle together when they're putting these movies. And although when you hit a certain level, you may not be the friendliest person and it would be okay, but they're looking for guys that are, going to be part of the wheel,
Yeah, makes sense. And then you walk in those rooms and there's a lot of people looking for the same job. Everybody's wanting the same thing. So you've got to walk in there being prepared to hear no.
Mostly.
How hard is that? How hard is that for young actors? Is that failure?
I can remember the first time it really set in for me. I was doing a movie, or I was up for a movie very quickly on called Angels in the Outfield. Do you remember that movie?
Yeah. I
had somehow gotten to like the 5th callback. Don't know how. Ben Williams, the center fielder, who was played by Matthew McConaughey, ended up getting the part. And so I went to my agent's freaking out because I'm up for this huge movie, huge. And I went in for the 5th callback. Now the nerves are setting in. You know what I mean? Like, I know I'm close. It's like I go into a final room and we're all the specific parts that they're casting that day in the final callback are in that room. And a guy that I just brought up, Matthew McConaughey, who I became friends with after, because we worked together 3 times. And he was sitting in a chair, and he had just come off Dazed and Confused, which was huge. Like, I knew who he was. Like, I knew,
is that his first?
That was his first, yeah. All right. Yeah. So I didn't get the part. I think the pressure, and I think, just being so green. And that was kind of the part that got me there, but it was also the thing that I think made me not get the part. I was, and of course McConaughey just came off a big movie, so that helps a lot. And fast forward to 1999. So this was probably 94, and then 1999, I booked U571 with McConaughey, and then we arrive in Rome, and I'm sitting across from him. I'm like, hey man, do you remember Angels in the Outfield? He's like, D Wood, yeah, man, I remember you. So I was like, I didn't get that role. He's like, yeah, I know. Yeah, I fell short. Some other guy got it, some schlep. But through that journey, I was having success. There was a moment in time where I thought about going back to Bowling Green. My buddies were all living together, doing the college thing. which sounded like a lot of fun, mostly parties, which, let's be honest, you hear about college. I wasn't going back to relearn history or math, which I love.
Without waiting tables and being told no.
Right, yeah. So the no is, I heard way more no's in my life. And I mean, Band of Brothers, it was me and another guy, but they had to fulfill the British obligation. They had to hire a certain amount of UK actors and a certain amount of American. I sat in the room with Tom Hanks when he was filming Castaway. He had that big beard. He was in between. I knew he was working on something. Nobody knew it was Castaway at the time, but he was doing Castaway. I was in the room with Spielberg and Tom Hanks. And I should add that there were a lot of jobs that I did before I got to that part. I'd start booking commercials. Casting directors would call and request for me to come in. And once you hit a certain, you kind of do co-stars, which are like, guest stars kind of like the next echelon, but co-stars are kind of where you start and got a line two or here or there in a movie or a TV show. And so I built my resume like most people that way. And then I got my first guest star, and then I got my first movie, and then, and then it just, was kind of pretty steadily working for the next 27.
So how old were you? How long did it take you to get a co-star role?
It took me, I got my first co-star, I think I hadn't even turned 19 yet. It was unbelievably fast.
So you were on an accelerated track.
I was super, I call it divine intervention, love God, all that stuff. And I'll just say that, it was a lot of, just show me what I'm supposed to do, because I felt like that's what I wanted to do. But we're probably going to get to this next part, what ultimately turned me away from that career. But, no kids, young, I lived really lean, was focused on learning the craft. And a lot of the craft is also being in front of cameras and understanding where to hit your mark. Say this here, do that there. I mean, there's a lot going on behind. When you see somebody in a movie walking through a living room and turning and all this stuff is pre-planned. And there's definitely that skill set that you have to learn too, of hitting your mark, not blocking your light. And what people want is they want you to know your damn lines. And I prided myself on, I knew their lines. Somebody would drop a line, I'd be like, oh, you say this.
Is that just work?
Yeah.
Just putting in the work.
Well, you've been a soccer coach and athlete your whole life. And, what do they say? Luck is preparedness and opportunity crossing, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just being as sharp at that moment where you could be messy and score that,
Yeah. But I think with actors, there's a misconception that beautiful people just get discovered and plucked out of the crowd and put on stage and they're successful. It sounds like that's not how it works. Everybody puts in the work together. It
happens where somebody who's exceptionally, you hear those stories, they happen, like David Borgades, who did Bones, and he was like a model and somebody spotted him. It happens, where guys are, but you also got to learn the craft. You could suck.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you might have a door open for you, but you got to walk through it and you got to perform on the other side. Otherwise, you're just another pretty face. And let me tell you, you couldn't throw a stone in LA without hitting
everybody. Everybody's talented.
Everybody's a 10. Beautiful. All the beautiful people from every small town in America move to Hollywood every year after year after year after year after year. I was in acting class with like Miss Georgia, Miss Texas. I mean, literally, like it looked like the whole room was models.
What do you think keeps most people from being? Because most of them never make it on screen, right? What is it that keeps most people?
I think that Hollywood is a meat grinder. It is a meat grinder. It will chew you up and spit you out if you get off the rails. There's a lot of temptation in LA, as there is in any big city, and and you can go down the wrong path. I mean, there's a lot of, whether it be drugs or alcohol or just anything that takes you off. So I think for me it was just about being focused, and I think the people that I saw make it were, as you go through the years in LA, you start to see the same people in the room with you, guys that have worked a lot. You know what I mean? So as I progressed through my career, I was constantly up against professionals. You know what I mean?
As you progress, the competition gets higher.
Everybody's done 5 movies. Everybody's
been through that meat grinder.
Yeah, they understand.
They're still talented.
Yeah. And so the competition, like anything, as the cream rises to the top, and more is expected of you at that level in every way.
Yeah.
And your reputation follows you, because a lot of times the people that you worked for before will pick up the phone and say, "Hey, man, how was this guy on set?"
Right. So those relationships that you
which
have
was
along the way are pretty valuable.
As in life.
Yeah. It's universal.
As in life.
Talking about what put people off the track. So most people there are coming from probably small towns like yours. And the margin for error in a small town is I think it's a lot bigger. You've got a support system. You can make mistakes. You can get into drinking too much, and you can get back on your feet. It sounds like in an environment like LA, the upside is pretty high, but it's also risky. Like the margin for error is really small.
Yeah. I can remember the years of coming up and kind of going through the process thinking, I'm giving away my 20s right now. And in my 20s, set you up for your 30s, which set you up for your 40s, and so on and so forth. So I felt like I needed to know that I was heading down the right path pretty early, because I wanted to be somebody that could still enjoy my life. Like I wasn't a thespian to the point of where if I wasn't having success, I was going to stay in pounding. Like my motto was, I'll make it or I'll die trying. But somewhere in your 20s, you start to go, hey, all my friends are graduating college now. They're getting their jobs. And I think the hardest thing for an actor is when you come off of a show, you're unemployed again.
Yeah.
Every last day is your last day, and you don't know when your next day is coming or what it is. There was
you only eat what you kill.
And that's what is, served me well in my life. But so I've always had the abundance attitude, but the scarcity's always motivated me in my life. Like I can achieve this, and I know that Andre Agassi and all the greats that they all work their butts off, and it's got to be in every single area of what you do to rise to the professional level. And so the odd thing about acting is you can, like I went to one of my roommates he actually ended up being on Yellowstone finally. I mean, he worked finally, but he was probably the best actor. I mean, he traveled to the London Shakespeare Conservatory. He won every award. He couldn't get a job in Hollywood for like 12 years. Nothing. I mean, he was doing plays, and I was like, this guy is the most talented actor that I know. Literally, like at that time, I was like, he's amazing. Like,
yeah. And was he your age? So he was young.
He was a couple more. He was probably 3 years older.
But you could see it.
Oh well, he just knew. I mean, like I had never been like. The other thing I lied about was all the plays I did on the back of my resume. They were like, were you in Guys and Dolls? I'm like, yes, I was. But I don't like talking about it because it's a very emotional play for me. But, I wasn't a trained actor. And a lot of people are like, what did you do in high school? I'm like, I didn't do anything.
Yeah.
And that's the people are like, what? And I'm like, I just knew I wanted to be part of this storytelling process, and I figured you're 18, you're bulletproof. I thought I could figure it out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And I'm like, let's go. Let's give it the college try here. So, and that was just always my mentality is how hard can it be?
Yeah.
And
when you're 18, you have very little to lose. Right, there's no opportunity cost when you're 18.
Correct.
But it sounds like when you got into your 20s, you realize this is hard. This is a tough grind. You use the words, you're giving up your 20s for something else. What was your why in your 20s? Like, it's different than when you were 18. Is it still the storytelling?
Yeah, it really was, man. It was like
it's
this magical thing when you go to a set, and I want to take you sometime.
Yeah.
We'll go do something cool when they film something in LA. I got tons of friends still in the industry, but when you get put on a movie set, it's magical because everybody in every department in the entire movie is a professional.
Mm.
And you understand when you are working with them how good everybody is at what they do, from the sound guys to the special effects to the stuntmen. I mean, there's every single piece of the cogs in that wheel they're just consummate professionals.
Yeah.
And everybody is cool. And I'm just telling you that, like, maybe they're not really in real life, but when they put on their professional face, they're the best.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's a cool environment to be in.
It's cool and it's rare. So few people ever get the experience of being around people that are the best in the world at their craft, what they do, and like surrounded by it. I'd never thought about that in terms of a set. But yeah, you got the best people in the world at what they do. Man,
and the biggest budget movie I did, I think I told you, was U-571. It was $100 million Universal movie. And I had done movies in the States. I did The Postman. I did, some stuff previously. But this is my first location shoot in Europe. And so, 7 callbacks, which each one is, nerve-wracking in itself. And you have to get studio approval. And so you go in the room and you do your thing. And the director's got to approve you. The studio's got to approve you. And then you finally get the job, and it's the most euphoric feeling that you could have, like when you land a role like that. It's just like, it's like life changing. You're in.
You're on that team. You're on that team.
Yeah.
You're competent people.
Your agents are stoked. You're like, okay, this was the right decision. It's paying off. And so I kept getting enough success over the years that kept me, the golden handcuffs. Kept me in the game. And I think as that went on, I started to, I met Carrie, my wife, and I was still working, but then I started to think about, life. Like, what am I going I had a house, and I was living in Studio City, and, I was living a pretty good life, but, I'd have a good year, and then a bad year, and then a decent.
Constant pressure.
Yeah, it was just always like, and so much of the decision making, all of it was out of my hands, and that is something that you and I've talked about before. Was I was constantly waiting for the validation to work and earn money for my family, and I could only get in front of so many movies or TV shows a year, and so I constantly felt like I was being held back from my potential and my earning potential. Right? Like, it wasn't about being rich, or anything like that. It was about making a living and doing what I love. Like, anyone wants to be happy in what they do. Hopefully you are. And having a lifestyle for my family that, I could provide for them, that there was security, all of the things that you start to think about. Not at my 18, not at 20, but now I was so far into this thing that I was like, I have to execute, or like, what else? I don't have a college degree, which I'll talk about in a second, about what happened to me when I moved to Tennessee, led me to new houses. But as the time went on, and then I played a part on General Hospital for 17 years, and I was what they call a non-contract reoccurring, which was cool because I could come in and work, and that they were never obligated to pay me money on a contract. But it was good for me because if I booked a movie or a TV show, or I could go off and do it, and my character was like this, this floating character in the show, and I got to play comedy on that, which I love, and all the things I did.
So you're in your 30s at this point? You and Carrie get married?
Yeah, 30. I was 32, 31 when I got married.
So you're still young, but you've gone through a few different phases at this point, like the 18-year-old Derk. Different risks, different needs, and then your 20s, you start honing that craft, and you feel the sacrificing your personal life for your career, and then you get to the 30s. It's like, wow, I don't know, like, is this been the right path? But now you've got a lot invested in it.
Correct. Everything, emotionally, mentally, physically, the relationships that I spent 20 years building in Hollywood, and you're pulling all the strings at that time. You've got casting directors that know you, that bring you in and like you, and like I'm there, I'm in the game, I'm at the level where, yes, all of that stuff is happening.
But what was working for you in your 20s, what was satisfying for you in your 20s is not necessarily what's satisfying to you in your 30s or your 40s. And I don't think that's unique. I don't think that's unique to acting. That's everybody. I think everybody goes through this. Be a UPS driver. There's that window of time where you either make the transition or you settle in, I guess, lower your expectations for life.
Correct.
Was there a point in time?
100%. Yeah. So Carrie found out we were having Kylie, and I don't think I had worked for like 6 months.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? And so you always have to manage your money.
Yeah. Like a squirrel.
You make a chunk, and then you're like, well, I don't know when I'm going to work again. So that was always really tough to kind of like budget, but that was kind of when things got real for me. I was like, all right, I'm married.
Mm-hmm.
Carrie wants to, raise, be a stay-at-home mom, or, she would have done whatever she had to do. And I just kind of felt like I'd been around town long enough. I'd seen enough people that I worked with that had went and done something else. Like somebody went and took over the goat cheese. Literally, like I had a friend that parents had like a goat cheese thing in New Hampshire, and he went back and took over the family business. And these are all guys that, had some success, but were kind of like, they had an exit option.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all right, I had some fun. I did my Hollywood thing. I got some great stories, but I'm going to go make $300,000 a year making goat cheese on my farm and get married. And my high school sweetheart and I have rekindled our, I wasn't a guy who had that option. I didn't have something to fall back on, so to speak, right? Everything that I had built was there. All the relationships, all of that life energy,
Your identity.
My identity.
I felt that as a coach. It's not monetary. It's just your identity. It's
right.
What people know you as.
Right.
And if you lose that, if you give that up, like you start questioning, who am I without this identity? And you got to make up a new one.
And it was 2016. We can go through all the different movies and shows I did, but the defining moment for me that made me move to Tennessee was I was on a show called The Last Ship on TNT, and same thing, studio approval, blah, blah, blah. And it was a reoccurring role. And I was going to do 3 episodes, but it was turning into 12. And then from 12, the director liked what I did on the first 2 and said, hey, I can see this character going further. And, we were in talks for a series regular on a show, which is life-changing money. And Alfre Woodard played my boss, Academy Award-winning actress, African-American, amazing woman. And she played my boss in the show. So I'd done the first 2 episodes. I was going into season 3. We were on hiatus. I was brushing my teeth. My agent called. And she's like, I got good news, I got bad news. And at this point in my career, I've been, been kicked in the proverbial balls so many times that my expression level was like, I was just like, had the 1,000-yard stare. I was like, what's up?
Yeah.
And she's like, so they didn't sign Alfre Woodard to a contract during hiatus, so she is going to, she took a show with Katherine Heigl. So you went from, this amount of income to I'm going to do 1 more episode and they have to kill me. Right? So I went from like being set up for a couple, 3-4 years pretty good to what's my next job, right?
Completely out of your control.
Completely out of my control. And I very calmly, my wife was actually next to me, like washing her face or something. And I said, hung up the phone. I looked at her and I go, I'm done. That was it.
Yeah.
And so I was still working on GH and doing stuff, but I knew that my pursuit for this, this show, I mean, I had done series that didn't get picked up. I mean, I've been to the precipice 3 or 4 times where if any of those things would have went, life-changing, life-changing money, life-changing career. And at this time I had 3 kids. You know, Cody was just born. And I'm like, I just can't allow my life to be this random choice. At this point in Hollywood, I know everyone. They know me. I mean, I'm not super famous, but I know all the people. And a good friend of mine was Bill Paxton. And, you know, Bill passed away a few years ago. And he put me in Frailty opposite McConaughey and Powers Booth after U571. And Bill was like my advocate. You know, he was like just this great guy. Like we just connected on U571 and became really good friends. He was a mentor to me. And so he was the guy who's like, you're one of my guys. He was directing and starting to do stuff. And so, you know, I wasn't banking on that. I mean, you know, my wife's uncle is Kevin Costner. So, you know, I'd already done a movie with him. So I'm like, well, maybe I got 2 guys that'll put me in, you know. I've definitely earned my place in the line. I wasn't looking for nepotism. I was looking for opportunity. Sure. Hey, I'll show up and work, you know me. But at that time, you know, Bill was doing some other stuff and I'm sorry, Bill had passed away by then. And I just looked at Carrie and I go, man, it's just I just can't do this anymore. Every job, everything means too much now. You know, I'm walking into the room and I'm wearing the pressure. I'm wearing not the need, but I gotta lay on this role that, like, you know, live. You know what I mean? Yeah. To further my life and my career. And I'm tired of worrying at this point in my life. I can't live lean anymore. You know, I've got a nut every month and I had to hit it. Right. And so I had a friend that was on a show on GH with me, a couple of them that lived in Leapers Fork, and so they would fly back and forth. And and my one buddy did The Last Castle with James Gandolfini, and they shot at the prison just south of Nashville, whatever that.
Brushy Mountain.
Yeah, that historic prison down there. So he had been here, and we had went through Nashville as a kid, and I was like, you know what? At that time, I just was like, I just need a new chapter. And the industry had changed. So whereas before you had to be in a room, you had to be in front of the people, you could put yourself on tape now. And you could really live anywhere, right? Like there were a lot of guys that, you know, Skeet Ulrich lived in Tennessee. So you had the opportunity to do that. But what you lose is that connection with people when you walk in the room. You know what I'm saying? That energy. Yeah. And so I knew that I was giving up what I feel like is one of my best attributes is being in the room. You know what I mean? Like there are plenty of people who know me, but there are also plenty of people who did not, other than my resume and my reel that they could watch. And so I knew that I was like, okay, so I said, hey babe, I think I want to move to Tennessee. And her first line was, well, you can move to Tennessee. And so like any smart husband, I brought her in October the first time. Everything was just beautifully colored, you know, I mean, orange and brown. And she was just like, wow. And I'm like, pretty nice, huh? So we stayed in the Brentwood area and we drove around, looked at places to possibly live. Cody was 6 months old and we were carrying him around and the girls stayed with their grandparents out there and toured everything, went to churches, ate downtown Franklin, all the things. And I was like, all right, like, you know, we flew home, we talked about it. And then we went back in the summer and we actually built a house in Thompson Station below there. We flew back, put a deposit down, started building a house. And then we decided before we moved here, it was just too far away from where we wanted to be. So we sold that house. Actually, I lost my deposit. I didn't sell anything. I lost like $10,000. You know, I walked away from it. And we rented a house sight unseen. Beautiful place with some land in LA was, you know, it was a deal to live here. Yeah. And like I said, I was flying back and forth a little bit, still working in LA. But I hated it because I was gone from my family. You know, I was couch surfing because I was considered a local hire and they don't, you know, I wasn't working on a movie or anything. So they don't fly you out. It's like, get your butt here, rent a car. And by that time, a lot of my friends had moved or had families or just, you know, just wasn't like, hey man, can I crash on your couch? You know? So I started to say, hey, listen, unless I can work for like at least a week, like it's not really worth it for me to come out there. So they'd write like 5 shows for me, or put me in 5 shows or whatever, or 8. And then I'd fly out and do that, come home and have some money again for a little while. And that kept happening. And my wife has always been really good at decorating. She, before, she was decorating people's houses at like 23 and people were paying her, and she's just amazing with fashion and detail and stuff.
Really good.
Thank you. And so we got to a place where I was like, well, let's, we had moved here. Oh yeah, I'm missing a very important part. And the money started to run out. We lived here, we felt like we were on vacation for a year. We had money and enough to, figure out what we were going to do. But then I got to the point, like, what am I going to do next? All right, like me, even if I booked a show, I had an agent in Atlanta for a little bit and they were like sending me stuff. And I was like, God, like, I'll tell you, just preparing for a role, sometimes you get offers. The further you get in the career, I've gotten a few, but you still got to fight for every crown. So, I'd get a 10-page scene at home and I'm like, I'm just going to take me a whole day, not only to memorize it, but to remember, I put myself on camera. They want a camera ready. They want to see what I'm going to look like the day I show up on set. I mean, yes, I have a gray screen behind me, lighting, but they want you to deliver the goods, so it's got to be performance level. It takes a lot of energy to do that stuff, right?
Sure.
Like, and so I found myself in the basement doing this stuff and little screen set up. I was just like, be down there for 10 hours, just dialing it in, taking notes, hitting my beats, developing the character to what I thought was, who he was, what was going on or whatever. And I just remember thinking, God, I'm not even in the mix anymore. Like, I don't see my friends in the room. I'm not walking in. And even though we were always in competition for getting the roles, like, you'd see your buddies. You'd be like, man, listen, if I'm not going to get it, like, at least you're getting it. You know what I mean? There were like 3 of us that would see each other all the time. And one of us would usually get it, right? And so I was just feeling very like separated and like lonely. And I was 43 when I moved here. And I was doing this, like you said, from being a coach, taking a complete pivot in life, which your story is amazing too. And I'm like, what's next? So I had a buddy who worked that I'd become friends with. He worked for Stryker Medical, Stryker? Yeah. So he's a recon guy with them. He did very, very well. Yeah. And I was like, look, bro, I don't have a college education, but you know me. Like, I think you show me how to sell the widget or whatever, and I'm the guy. Like, I promise you, I'll crush it. Yeah. And he's like, man, he's just like, I can't. He's like, I'm hiring these guys out of college. I'm paying them $40,000 a year. And, they're 18, 19, or, 22 years old or whatever, and they're going to work their way up the proverbial ladder just like he did. And I was like, man, I got to make X amount of dollars a year. Like, that's not even a quarter of what I need to make. You know what I mean? Like, I got a family to support, and we have a way of life that we've come to, not expect, but work hard for, Yeah. And so I was lost, I was really kind of at this place in my life where, like, feeling defeated, like I had this really cool fireside story for everybody who wanted to talk about all the movie stars I've worked with and all the locations I went up, and it didn't mean anything in this world. Nobody cared. And I never carried it like a badge of honor, like it was good, like, hey, do you know what I did? Like, in fact, I don't talk about it because people half the time think I'm lying probably about.
But when you do, the stories.
I mean, I've got,
you have the best.
Yeah, they're pretty crazy. They're pretty crazy, and just hanging out with Bon Jovi and Bart, and just like these guys were, like me and you sitting here. They're just like your friends, and everyone's the same. I mean, they're just on TV, and everyone sees them in this special light, but. They're all just people, at the end of the day. They just do something where everyone sees them, and the other assumption everyone made was I was rich. You know what I mean? Like, you're on TV, you must be rich. Yeah. And I was a working actor. That's what I was. I mean, yes, there were times I made good money, but there were also plenty of times I didn't make any money. So, you spread that, you butter the cake with that, the icing's never thick anywhere,
Right.
So I'm in Brentwood. I'm like, I don't want to fly back to LA anymore and be gone. I'm tired of it. I told the show, I'm like, I'm done. Unless you have something crazy for me to do or you're going to write me, I'm not flying back anymore. And so I picked up my computer one day, and Carrie and I had always wanted to flip houses. We watched all the shows, and a couple of the houses I lived in LA, I fixed up while I was there. Never flipping them, but fixed them up and then sold them and moved to the next house. And so I was like, I wonder if there's house flipping franchise. I don't even know if they have those. I've seen the We Buy Ugly Houses thing, but so, you're going to come into the story here very quickly. But I get on and I type in house flipping franchises, and New Again Houses pops up in Bristol, and I'm like, this must be some geo-located BS. It knows I'm in Tennessee. There's no way these guys are in Bristol. And then I read about the company and Alta Capital, and I was like, man, this, I don't know, feels too good to be true, right? And again, I had no idea what any of this meant at the time.
These were early days.
These were early.
Early days.
I got you on the phone.
Yeah.
If anybody knows Matt now, it's like, I'm bleeding to death on the side of a bell. If you need Matt, you can get a hold of him. I know that. You're very gracious with your time. But what people don't know is that, you're the visionary of this company, and it's become you're everywhere in this company, but you've done a very good job building a system around, which is what we do in New Again House, is the whole system. You're a very detailed system person, and probably one of the best Excel people I think I've ever seen in my life. For somebody who has no Excel experience, your Excel sheets are something of legend.
I think in spreadsheets.
Man, you're like Neo in the Matrix on that thing. I'll leave that stuff up to you. You've got the market cornered on that. So I looked at Carrie, and we were whittling down on our money, and I was like, I could take money from my pension, my SAG-AFTRA pension, but they literally, they take 40%. If I take it before I'm 55, they just back off 40%, whatever that was. And that was the desperation, okay, if we're destitute, I don't have any rich parents. I didn't come from any kind of crazy background. I don't have anybody who can help us pay our bills. So I felt that same thing inside of me again, where I'm like, I got to make it happen. I'm the leader of this family. I got to dig deep. I got to figure this out, and I need to figure out how to make the kind of money that I'm used to making without going to jail.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Without robbing a bunch of banks or selling drugs. And
you're in your 40s,
man.
And it's about now. It's not like when you're 18. It's like, I can build this thing for 10 years.
Right.
It's about the future, but now you've got your skill set, and you got to produce now.
100%. I had to hit fast forward.
Yeah.
Quickly. I had 6 months worth of money when I got into New Again Houses.
Yeah.
And, so I called Matt, and I said, hey, I'm this guy, whatever, very interested in this program that you guys have. I don't know much yet, but at that time, a friend of mine, Brian Bull, who's also with New Again Houses, and him and I were friends in LA, but through this weird connection, but him and I were, knew each other for over 10 years. And so Brian's a great guy, and hopefully he does a podcast sometime, because he's got a great story too. But he moved here, and he was looking to work for Dave Ramsey at the time. And, Dave Ramsey's a great company, but they want your butt in the seat from 8 to 5, and you get an hour lunch. It's very and so, but he moved here with the principle of flipping houses. It was interesting because he was an agent, as you know, before he left, and he got here. He's like, I'm buying a house right when I get there, and I'm going to flip it. And he did. He got right here. He bought a house. And I was like, but hey, man, I did a little research. I found this company, talked to the owner. It's up in Bristol. I'm like, do you want to go meet these guys? Like, they sound like they have a pretty good program. And he's like, Brian, well, let me look at it. He had to analyze it. I'm ready to shoot aim guy. You know me. I'm like, let's go. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you're also very self-aware. You've always impressed me as being self-aware.
Thank you.
And I think that's a piece of you that's a really important piece.
Thank you. Well, I'll add that to my skills. I'm self-aware. What does that get me?
But there's a difference between I wouldn't say that you're impulsive. I think there's a lot of self-awareness that goes into your decisions.
Calculated trigger pulling. I'll say that. Yeah, I'm not. Came up here, sat down with you and Sam in your office, and love Sam. I love the team is just amazing. You've surrounded yourself with guys that truly care about the success of other people. Mm-hmm. And the old saying, if you help somebody get everything they want, you'll automatically get everything you want. Yeah. And I feel like that's really how you guys led. Mark Pate. Yeah. I love that dude. Yeah. I mean, amazing. To be honest with you, I wasn't in the greatest financial situation when I came into this company. I've been very clear with you on that. And without you guys, you're going to say we took a chance on you, but you really took a chance on us. Yeah. And so Brian and I, that first year, owned that franchise together. And we just, we hit it hard right out of the gate. Yes. I was time was not on my side. Mm-hmm. And
there's a sense of urgency from the beginning. I don't think I realized the why behind the sense of urgency, at the time. But you guys.
Those aren't cards I want to lead with. You know what I mean? I'm desperate.
Yeah, but it matters, we talk a lot about burning the boats. Yeah. And there's just a different mentality when someone burns the boats. They're fully committed. There's no plan B. Mm. The things that we can accomplish with that mindset are really high.
Man, you just said it. I knew based on your system, the system, and what you guys had done, and just here's what I felt finally, that I could be in control. I could drive my boat. Mm-hmm. I always use the analogy, in Hollywood, you're in a Ferrari with no steering wheel. Yeah. You just hit the pedals I mean, there's just zero direct. You can't direct the Ferrari. It's either going to slam into a wall or go down the highway for a little bit and then go over a cliff and you might regain control. What I saw here was, I know I'm going to work my ass off like I have in my life. I'm still worried about money and I don't need to be. But I mean, you know what I'm saying? I still think about financially, what's in the pipeline, what's coming out, where, all the things that we learned through the system. Yeah. But my urgency was DEFCON 1. I mean, I was I was serious. This thing had to happen. And so, we got in, Brian and I got our first house, and then we got another one, and then we had owned 5, and then COVID hit. I was like, damn it. If I don't have bad luck, I don't have any luck at all.
And on March 15th of 2020, that was COVID.
Nobody knew.
You're in real estate. There's a lot of bad possibilities.
Man, nobody knew. I was but luckily enough, we had committed and we were in the process. And of course, we know COVID worked out to be a really good period for the entire real estate industry. So that was just life changing. So, we just hit it hard, and I'll just say, to this day, I would never want to flip a house or build without this process, because to this day, even when I know that you say that you've been out of the mix for a little bit and you're kind of more of the canvas guy, but you could walk into a house like I can now and go, the sill plates are bad, I need joists, the trusses, now we can. I'm not saying we watch these shows where these guys walk into the houses, Tarek, and he's like, the contractor's like 8,000, 10,000, 20,000, like everyone sees these numbers and they're like, okay, maybe they can kind of do that, but not really.
It's just you gotta have good math, man.
It's and so the process that I learned, right off the bat was like how to smartly evaluate every property through this amazing system. And like I have so much confidence because I told you, like during COVID, a lot of times we'd have an hour to buy a house.
Yeah.
And you see guys, like all these investors would show up and they'd have their contractor with them. And I'm in there with a laser measure writing down my stuff. And they're just rubbernecking. They're just like, and they're like whispering each other's ear. I'm like, how do these guys even know what they're doing?
It's not good math.
It's not good math. And we've seen plenty of people, as we say, some of the best deals we ever made were deals we never made.
Yeah.
And
for sure. Like going back to that set that you were talking about and being surrounded by professionals. I had that experience when I was in graduate school at Duke. It's like you walk around and you just see people, these professors, and everybody there is because they're the best person in the world at what they do. And it's like this, you learn from them, you learn to emulate them, but you also have you have a certain degree of trust in them. And if you go to your set, like you were good at certain things, but there's a million things on that set that you're not competent at. But being surrounded in that environment, you can trust the guy next to you that they're going to do a really good job. That's such a unique thing, right? Like people don't have that experience very often. And so you think about in business, like that's the hardest part of going to be an entrepreneur, of leading something like that and doing something on your own. You have no team. You can't afford that world-class team, right?
100%.
For me, that's what I wanted. I wanted to build a world-class team, but it's also the hardest because how do you get there? Like to survive, you're a one-man operation. How do you get to this? It takes time. Like you keep building it.
I think I need to interview you sometime because I'd love to hear your whole story laid out on this because, flipping a house, there's just so much to the system and the team. And like you said, to build that, like, honestly, like it's outside my wheelhouse, man. Like you put together, like you said, a world-class team. Sam's one of your previous students or players, but like I feel like you have the innate ability to gauge people, read them. I mean, you have to do that at what you're doing and what you've created here. I mean, it's how many franchises we have now?
It's over 50.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
What was I 3 or 4?
I think maybe 5
I
or
mean,
6. Yeah.
It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, but to see it grow, like that is the rewarding part of building a business, I think, is to be able to have high quality people be attracted to it and want to be a part of it. That's it's not easy to do, but it's probably the most rewarding part of being a part of building it. It's hard.
Yes.
Yeah. And so now you started with the flipping, but you've built an ecosystem, and we talk a lot about you've got to build an ecosystem. You've got to build that local team who is really good at things. And I think that's the part that people kind of neglect when they're thinking about it. And so now you're building new construction houses. That seems to be where you're spending the most of your time. It's a little bit different, but a lot of the principles are the same. One of the things that's the same is you've got to have an ecosystem. So you've got to have guys who are good at framing. You've got to have guys that are good at plumbing, electrical. That's not easy to build. Tell me how that's grown and developed.
Yeah, I think everything always boils back to relationships and people. And I think if I have to pat myself on the back, it would be that I feel like I'm a good people person, but I care.
Because you don't have any technical skills on the construction side.
Nothing.
You and I know which side of part of the hammer to hold.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I say this all the time, without I've learned, I'm still learning here with a fire hose. but it's a guided fire hose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm able to, for anybody who's thinking about, flipping in the world, whether it's with new again houses or on their own or whatever, man, you better have you can't make many mistakes in this without getting hurt really bad.
Yeah. I think that's the case for any business.
Mm-hmm.
Like everybody's flipping something.
Yeah.
Right? Like everybody flips something. And the competition out there, the margin for error, like you gotta be good at it.
And I think that we're talking about I still love flipping, as you know.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's all, wherever you are in this country, there's going to be a different opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some areas have the tendency to be able to build what I'm building right now, and some are going to be more rehab heavy just because of their location and they're in the city, or what I mean.
Couldn't do what you're doing in Nashville. You can't just do that in Bristol. It's different.
It's different. So, like you said, what we have is the A product is still the A product. Like every house in every community across the country, we're never going to run out of houses to flip. It's infinite inventory.
Yeah.
And I still love that process. I've got 3.
Because so few people can do it well.
Right. That's the art.
Yeah.
Like, what is it going to cost to fix? What can I sell it for? It's pretty easy. And can I stay on those numbers? And without some kind of guidance, you're going to, it's not going to turn out well for you. So, for me, the ecosystem's been really important. From, of course, Paul, who does a lot of, I've been working with him for years.
Yeah, I started with him.
Great guy, still does a lot of the stuff. And I got to give you guys credit, because when I was like, hey, I'm going to build my first house, you guys took the chance and trusted me to take a good amount of money and go and do that. But that still went through the same process. We still put it in the system. We still did the construction budget. We still knew what the ARV was. And so the only difference was I was just starting from scratch. I'm still producing a house, whether it be a rehab or the build. And for me, the ecosystem was just, meeting a gentleman who has been a builder for 45 years. And then about 15 years ago, this guy's ninja, and has developed a lot of relationships with, of course, all of the subs that I use. And I bought a piece of land, and I remember I sold him half of it for what I bought it for. And I said, hey, listen, if I give you this lot, which I know it's a good deal, would you show me how, I already know what I'm doing. I know enough to be dangerous, but I'd love to see your process here on how you go about building a house. Which he said, yes.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of self-awareness in what you just said.
Yeah, and I said, hey, I understand. He said, no, he's a very gracious guy. He builds about 30 a year. This was just another one, but we've become very good friends since then. And he helps answer questions about if I'm looking at a lot or something. He's always been very accessible. But yeah, so I enjoy the I'm learning about rezoning land and building zoning and all of the things, which is just helping me become better at everything. Now I can walk into a house and go, hey man, it shouldn't cost that much to frame that. Like, I got guys that will do it for $550 a square foot. Like, what are we doing here? And just all of the equation is just feeding it, which leads me back to, I wake up now with like I'm happy, purpose, like I'm fulfilled. I'm building stuff. I've got projects going, selling, new stuff I'm looking at. This is the thing I was missing in Hollywood, was this continual buffet of being able to put my energy into it and have it mean and feel like I'm doing something, and living a very good lifestyle. Like you said, it's not about money.
Yeah.
I take my kids to school when I want. I watch games. I go, like, daddy's never gone at work. You know what I mean? And to me, that's priceless. That's been the most important thing for Carrie and I, to be able to have that family lifestyle. And I think I had this call with Sam the other day, and I was like, hey, I'm not trying to do X amount of houses a year. I'm trying to do well, because I'm hungry like the wolf 24/7, and I still say I think the people that are really good at this business are gonna, and I know we have a wide spectrum of owners, but for me, I'm a 1099 employee, and so I'm always thinking about where my next hot. I've never known what it's like to have a paycheck in my whole life. Never on Friday was I getting guaranteed anything from the week before. I don't even know what that's like.
Yeah.
And I still don't, and I don't want to.
I think that's really important. Yeah. It's scary. You've always lived that.
Always.
A lot of people, it's tough if you've lived the W-2 to have the courage.
And I get that.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a real fear. I understand. I think I'd probably feel it too if I were there, but
yeah, you
got to let go not let go, but I think the thing that creates is just this drive and this hunger. And I'm not saying you can't have it and be a W-2 employee. I'm just saying it's a different thing it creates inside of you.
For me, there was something deep inside of me that I wanted to know if I could be successful. And either if I was going to succeed or I was going to fail, it was going to be because of me.
Right.
Like I
yes.
needed to prove that to myself, because you get in this rut working for somebody else. You can blame your boss, blame some mid-level manager,
casting director. Like there's always this out that it's somebody's fault. I wanted to know, like, I can do this. If I fail, it's because I wasn't good enough, but I thought I could get better at it. Man,
right?
you're saying it right now. It's everything I feel. If it is to be, it's up to me.
Yeah.
Like I'm going to the second that I'm pointing at someone else, I should be pointing here first. Because I'm the one who is the captain of my ship. And if I'm not steering it correctly, you got to make a course adjustment. And that doesn't matter when it happens in your life. At some point, maybe you hate your job. Maybe you make great money, but you hate your job, or whatever it is. Or maybe, you just like the process of, doing a couple, a year. Me, I went full time from day one. I'm full time here, baby.
I think that's a lot of why you were so successful out of the gate.
Yeah, well, necessity is the mother of invention.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. But yeah, it's been awesome, and I feel like the company you guys keep evolving. You keep coming up with very innovative products. You guys aren't just thinking about the short term. You guys have shifted your energy into a lot of us are starting to go. We want to acquire. We want to build the rental portfolio, and if you're a one-off investor out there, you hopefully you've had someone that's been a great mentor in your life, and you're super savvy. I'm not saying that's impossible. We know there's people successful, but if you're coming from a Hollywood career where you have never swung a hammer except in a scene, I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV.
Literally.
Yeah, I showed up with zero experience. I mean zero, and I think that's important for people to know. Is like you got to show up with your work boots on. But if you work hard in this system, there's success.
Yeah. You showed up with zero technical experience, but I think the skills that you honed in Hollywood are transferable, and that's what's so cool to see about being a part of a larger system. Is you got 50 owners. They all come from different.
Yes.
They all come from different experiences. Like everybody is bringing some unique expertise that is uniquely them to this new challenge, and they bring something different. But you brought like that hustle, that discipline, the people skills, the ability to sell yourself in those audition rooms. Like that's more important than knowing which end of the hammer to hold.
Hey, I
think people underestimate that.
Yeah.
Like there was a time where you were in Hollywood and thinking, these are my skills. Are any of them transferable? And I think a lot of people go, and this is not just for this particular, for any business. You want to do something new. Like you question whether your skills are transferable. I think they are. It's finding the right product where you can transfer them.
And again, I just have to go back to I enjoy the process a lot. I'm not here just because there's an opportunity to do very well financially. I literally love like you said, the team. Like we do an experience cohort call, and the guys that I'm talking to all across the country are just like I love those guys. They're like brothers. Like I'm a lifer here. Like this, I'm never going anywhere. Like this to me is not. It's not. We're going to continue to evolve and grow, and I want to be part of that process. Like you said, though, I'm used to having a team around me. I'm used to having co-stars, other directors I love, support, all of the things, and that's what I feel like I have here. Although we're all remote, we have the chance to talk to each other, and a lot of times we're texting each other and sending funny, look at this one, or some of the, and that's so important to me too. Is like I think I would feel lonely again, like I did in that basement in Brentwood, going on these auditions, if I were just a one-man band out there swinging a hammer and I had nobody to bounce ideas off of. And what you've taught in the system is the pipeline and the trajectory of growth and the path to it. Not only financially, the funding, the construction support, I could have only imagined that I'm going to be building 6 houses at once and flipping 3 others and buying. And I've got more lots under contract I haven't even talked to you about yet today. And so I'm just, so now I'm doing the work and I'm in my lane and I'm producing the opportunity and then I'm executing it through the system. You know what I mean? And there's no end in sight. Like, this isn't something I'm looking at. And by the way, half of my Hollywood friends are calling and seeing, I'm pretty quiet. I don't, I'm not a boastful person. I don't go on Facebook and like, hey, I just built 4 more. But, once in a while I do a video and, I should probably be better about that. But I was in camera and stuff for so many years that I just am like, I just want to disappear from it for a little bit. But people are noticing, like, man, you just didn't flip 3 houses and you're done. Like this, I'm like, this is my career, man. I'm like, I'm after it, you know, and I love it. And I think
but there's a consistency. You approached your professional acting career the same way. You were all in and you wanted it to be really good. It's transferable.
You have to be, and I just feel like if you're leaving it up, you're leaving it up to somebody else if you don't take control of it. I'm super blessed to be a part of this. I mean, Carrie and I just look back on the timing, and it was just like God's answered prayer. Literally, it's been life-changing for us, and you know that. I talk, anytime anybody will listen, I'll just say, without Mark and Matt taking a chance on me, I might be selling pencils on Hollywood Boulevard right now.
Yeah. I remember our first conversation really clearly because it was inspirational for me too, because when you're starting a business, like we were, at that point we were young, we were faking it until we made it too. And so it's hard. And I remember you telling me the story about going to Hollywood and the way that you had to grind at that point, because that's what I was doing here. And it was inspirational to me. I don't know if I ever told you that or not, but that really impacted me because it spoke to me.
Wow.
And it's like, yeah, man, there's certain stages of life where you just show up and you put one foot in front of the other and you grind. Like you work and you work and you work and then something good happens.
Doors open, but not unless you're knocking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. But and then, I don't know if you want to cover anything else, but I think that the thing I would say to anyone, and I know this podcast isn't about new again houses. I know it's about, people, but what I would say to somebody out there that no matter what you do, if you want to be the best or successful at anything, you need a roadmap. You need mentors. You need money. You need access to the funds. And I will say that New Again Houses, you guys have been very good about screening the right, because not anyone can just come here and sign up. I mean, you guys have a process too, that the onboarding. And I think that's so important to protect the integrity of what you guys have built, what we've all built, what we're part of. And so, if you're a good person and you want to work hard and you want a better, maybe career trajectory, I literally, there was nothing else anywhere that even compared to this opportunity. There's not, what is there? There's nothing. Where else can you come in and work really hard, but have a system that helps you grow financially in all of the ways? Like, it didn't exist. I still don't.
Real estate's unique.
Real estate.
There's a lot of great things to do, man.
I mean, but we do need to do your story sometime. I'm going to turn the tables on you. I love making people cry in an interview. Matt, tell me about your inner child. What is he feeling right now?
Well, next time we'll do it later in the afternoon. We'll get some whiskey out here rather than water.
Man,
we'll go at it.
I would love it. We have a lot of stuff we didn't talk about. We can have a part 2 of this for sure.
Let's do it. Derk, thanks so much for being on, man.
Thank you, brother. Thanks for having me. Thanks for everything. Love you, buddy.